These hedges, I'm very fond of them this time of year because of the colours that's in them and the berries and the leaves changing colour. And a lot of the berries are just down to the pollinators, which I consider to be very important. And I try and manage them as best I can for that aim. Because I think if we realised all the fruits that would be missing in our hedgerows, if we didn't have pollinators, we might treat them a little bit better. This hedgerow has whitethorn, spindle, dog rose and crabapple mainly, and I think it all adds to the colour and glory of the hedge during the year. I try and manage the hedges to help the pollinators, give the trees a chance to flower. An awful lot of trees and shrubs will only flower on 2-year-old wood, so if you flail them or cut them every year, you won't have any flowers, therefore you won't have any fruits. And it all plays into the life cycle of the insects. If the flowers aren't there, they have no pollen to rear their young, and after 2 years they're gone as well, maybe even after 12 months. And I suppose we've become acclimatised now to having our hedges cut and the lack of insects on our hedges. Another area in the hedgerows where there's a bit of bare earth, it's a great nesting site for mining bees. And I have a fine colony of the ashy mining bee, lovely black and white bee that nests here. Some of these small holes are actually the mines that the bees live in. And all they need is a bit of south-facing bare earth with a dry site. That's all they need. Another aspect of the hedgerows that's very important is the early flying species of bees, such as the early bumblebee and the early mining bee, is that they need a food source. And whitethorn is particularly one of the earlier ones in the hedgerows, along with dandelions and willow, which are very important for those early flying species. I suppose the management of hedges has changed greatly since I was a child. Back in the 70s, we would get a circular saw in every 7 or 8 years, saw down the entire hedge, and then we would harvest the best of the wood out of it for firewood. But then the flails came on and it was much more convenient because there was no tidying up to do. Definitely less work with it. And we've probably become acclimatised now to having a very tidy, short hedge. But I think we've lost an awful lot of the colour and the wildlife that we would have had back then. There's nowhere for birds to nest, there's nowhere for birds for food, the insects are gone. And we've also lost a lot of the plants out of the hedges because from continuous cutting, a lot of them have just died out. They haven't replenished it from their seeds. And I think in the autumn in particular, you'll notice the colour in the hedgerows. A lot of hedgerows just lose all their leaves all of a sudden, whereas you can see here, a lot of the hedges have yellows and reds. I also think that hedgerows are very important from the point of view of shelter, both for animals and for stock and for buildings. We've had a lot of storms over the last number of years, and I think a lot of farmyards would have benefited greatly from a hedgerow near them to provide shelter for their buildings and their stock. Particularly this year with Storm Emma, when the snow came in March, a lot of stock had actually been out at night time, and they didn't have anything, only a strand of wire between them and a north wind. So the hedgerows here are just, sides of them are trimmed every 2 or 3 years just to keep the thing in a good shape and back a little bit from the electric fence wire so it's not hurting. This hedgerow hasn't been cut in over 2 years now, and I don't have any problems with the electric fence wire being earthed by the fence. When I am cutting an internal hedge, we try and cut it in an A shape, maybe with a flat top on it, just to thicken the hedge and to provide lighting, to really thicken it up with extra growth towards the bottom. And it also provides excellent place for bumblebees and other insects to nest at the bottom, and for birds to nest as well. A lot of my hedges are made up of whitethorn and hawthorn, and in the month of May and into June, when they're in full flower, I love to come down because they're actually heaving with insects, and the buzzing is just a joy to me to hear as I'm walking past. And you can see the result of it here, that all these berries, which we would be missing if the little insects weren't there, because they won't self-pollinate. They need the bees and the hoverflies to do it. I try and manage my hedges to help pollinator insects and all insects, because it's a benefit both to them and to the birds that feed on them and the other animals that feed on them. And the best way of doing it is just rotational hedge cutting every 2 or 3 years. And I'd be very confident that managing the hedgerows as I do hasn't really cost me anything. I'm not getting paid to do it either. So to me it's just the natural way they should be.